The space station, known officially as K7 Gamma but called the Crossroads by most who lived there, was a city of metal and light floating in the black silence. It was a place of constant noise. The low hum of the life support systems was a sound you felt in your bones. The hiss of airlock doors and the chatter of 100 different species created a strange, never-ending music. People moved through the wide corridors in a hurry. There were tall, insect-like Thraxians clicking their mandibles as they discussed trade deals. There were bulky, fur-covered Grunn moving heavy crates. And there were humans like Sumin who walked among them all trying to find their place. Sumin was a man who noticed things. It was his job as a xenobiologist, but it was also his nature. While others saw the station as a machine for living and working, Sumin saw it as a living ecosystem. He saw how the light from a particular star panel made the green leaves of the hydroponic gardens glow. He noticed the small six-legged cleaning creatures that scurried along the vents, keeping everything spotless. And he noticed her. In the station's central arboretum, a large garden dome built to remind organic species of home, there was a Xylon. Her name was Alara. She was the only one of her kind on the station. To most, she was a beautiful object, a piece of living art. Her body seemed to be made of something between polished pearl and clear crystal. It caught the light from the fake sun lamps overhead and broke it into soft, colorful shimmers that danced on the walls around her. She was quiet and still, often sitting for hours near a small, trickling stream. Sumin came to the arboretum often. At first it was professional curiosity. The Gylans were a dying race and their biology was not well understood. But soon his visits became something more. He wasn't just studying her. He was sharing a space with her. He would sit on a bench nearby and read from his data pad, or just watch the leaves rustle in the artificial breeze. He never spoke to her. He didn't know if she could even understand his language, but he felt a calmness in her presence. Lately, however, that calmness had been replaced by a quiet sadness. Sumin was the only one who seemed to see it. He saw it in the way she moved. Her movements, once fluid and graceful, were now slow and careful, as if every motion caused her pain. He saw it in the light she gave off. It was dimmer now, like a lamp with a failing power source, and then he saw the cracks. They were tiny at first, like the finest threads of a spider's web on her opalescent skin. They started on her hands and arms, thin white lines that didn't glow like the rest of her. Over the weeks, they grew longer and deeper. They spread to her face, a delicate map of suffering etched around her eyes and across her cheeks. The other species in the arboretum would glance at her, their many eyes registering the change, but they would simply move on. To them, it was a simple fact. The Xylan was dying. It was a known thing. It was sad, but it was also natural. There was nothing to be done. Sumin felt a heavy feeling in his chest every time he saw her. It was a feeling of helplessness. He wanted to help, to fix her, but he was just one man. He didn't have the knowledge or the tools. One afternoon, the station's central communication system chimed. A calm digital voice filled every corridor, every room, and the arboretum. Station-wide announcement. The being designated Alara of the Xylan species has invoked a final cultural rite. In accordance with her people's tradition, she seeks to fulfill the Song of Union before her light is extinguished. She wishes to experience the bond of a devoted partner. Any consenting sentient being is invited to fulfill this role. A strange silence fell over the arboretum. The clicking of Thraxian mandibles stopped. The low rumbles of the Grunn fell quiet. Everyone looked towards Alara, who was standing near the stream, her head held high despite the fractures that marred her beauty. Then, the murmuring started. A Thraxian, its large compound eyes blinking, turned to its companion. A bonding ritual? With a terminal life form? What is the logical purpose? A Grunn shook its massive head. It is a waste of energy. The unit is non-functional. The process is inefficient. Other species, a mix of reptilian, avian, and others that had no Earth equivalent, all expressed similar thoughts in their own ways. They saw her request as confusing. It was emotional. It was sentimental. It did not help her survive. It did not advance knowledge or profit. It was, to their minds, a pointless gesture. One by one, they refused. They did it politely with slight bows or nods of their heads, but the meaning was clear. They turned away. They went back to their business. The arboretum began to empty as people left, not wanting to be associated with the uncomfortable dying wish of the crystal woman. Sumin stood frozen near his usual bench. He watched the scene unfold, his heart pounding in his ears. He saw the hope in Alara's luminous eyes slowly fade as each being rejected her. The light within her seemed to grow even dimmer with each refusal. She was being told she was not worth the effort in her final days. His friend, Jay, was standing next to him. Jay was a good man but practical. He worked in station logistics. He saw the universe in terms of resources and results. He put a hand on Sumin's shoulder. "Sumin, let's go," Jay said, his voice low. "There's nothing to see here." "It's just a sad story." Sumin didn't move. His eyes were locked on Alara. He saw the slight tremble in her fragile hands. "It's a death ritual," Jay continued, trying to pull him away. "It's poetry. It doesn't mean anything. If you say yes, what happens? You become a nurse for a week? You watch her die, then what? You get your heart broken for no reason. There's no point." Sumin heard the words, but they sounded hollow. He wasn't thinking about points or reasons. He was thinking about the quiet afternoons in the garden. He was thinking about the pain in her slow movements. He was thinking about the profound loneliness of dying surrounded by people who saw you as a problem instead of a person. He thought about her wish. Not to be cured, not to be famous, but to be a wife. To devote herself to someone and to have someone devote themselves to her, even for a short time. It was a wish for connection, for meaning in the face of nothingness. While everyone else saw an illogical burden, Sumin saw a simple human need. He took a deep breath. He shook off Jay's hand. Without a word, he took a step forward. Then another. His footsteps echoed in the now quiet arboretum. He walked past the last few aliens who were shaking their heads as they left. He walked directly towards Alara, who watched him approach, a flicker of her former light returning to her eyes. He stopped in front of her. She was slightly shorter than him. He could see the intricate patterns of the fractures on her face up close. They did not make her less beautiful. They made her look brave. He looked into her eyes, which were like pools of liquid light. He gave her a small, gentle smile. Then, Sumin, the human, the one who noticed things, said the word that everyone else found too difficult. "Yes," he said. The single word hung in the air of the arboretum, clear and solid. Yes. It was a simple sound, but in the quiet room it felt as loud as an airlock blast. The few remaining beings stopped and turned. Their various eyes, some with multiple lenses, some with slitted pupils, all focused on the human and the Zealan. Alara looked at Sumin. Her luminous eyes widened. The faint, shimmering light inside her body seemed to pulse, growing just a little bit brighter. The cracks on her face were still there, a web of pain, but for a moment they seemed less deep. She did not smile because her people did not express joy in that way. Instead, she brought her two fragile, crystalline hands together in front of her chest, the tips of her fingers touching. It was a gesture of profound gratitude and acceptance. A wave of murmuring passed through the small crowd. The sounds were not of celebration but of confusion and disbelief. Jay rushed forward, grabbing Sumin's arm again. "Sumin, what are you doing? You can't be serious," he whispered, his voice tight with panic. "Think for a minute. This is a huge mistake." Sumin kept his eyes on Alara. "I have thought about it, Jay. But you don't know what you're agreeing to. What does this even mean? Devoted wife? Their culture is a mystery. This could mean anything. It could be a legal contract. It could mean you're responsible for her end. Do you understand that?" Sumin finally turned to look at his friend. He saw the genuine worry on Jay's face. He knew Jay was trying to protect him from pain. "I understand that she is alone," Sumin said, his voice calm but firm. "And I understand that I can help with that." A station official, a tall, slender being with gray skin and large black eyes, approached them. It was one of the administrators, a species known for its strict adherence to rules. Its name was unpronounceable to humans, so most just called it administrator. "The human has consented?" the administrator asked, its voice a dry, rustling sound. It held a datapad. "Yes," Sumin said again, louder this time. The administrator's black eyes blinked slowly. It made a note on the pad. "The union is recognized pending formal registration. The Xylan cultural rite, Song of Union, requires a public declaration of intent and a private bonding period. Do you, human Sumin, understand the responsibilities? You are to provide a space for the union. You are to accept her devotion. You are to be present until the cycle concludes. The cycle? Suman asked. Her life cycle, the administrator stated, without any emotion. It is concluding. The medics estimate 1 standard week. Perhaps less. Your duties will last for that duration. Jay let out a frustrated sigh. Suman, listen. It's a week of watching her die. That's your duty. Is that what you want? Suman looked from Jay's worried face to the administrator's blank one, and finally back to Alara, who was watching him with a quiet, intense hope. He saw not a dying specimen but a person seeking comfort. It is, Suman said to the administrator. Then he looked at Jay. It's what I'm going to do. The official ceremony was nothing like a human wedding. It took place in a sterile white office. There was no music, no flowers, no friends or family. Only Suman, Alara, and the administrator. A small floating drone served as the official witness. Do you, Suman of humanity, consent to enter into the Song of Union with Alara of the Xylan, accepting the role of partner for the duration of her life cycle? The administrator asked. I do, Suman said. The drone turned its single lens to Alara. Do you, Alara of the Xylan, consent to enter into the Song of Union with Suman of humanity, offering your devotion for the duration of your life cycle? Alara brought her hands together again and gave a slow, graceful nod. A soft chime like a tiny bell sounded from her. The administrator took this as her yes. Union logged and recorded, the administrator said. The human is now responsible for the Xylan's well-being until her deactivation. With that, the administrator turned and left the room, its duty complete. Suman was now married. He stood alone in the office with his new wife. The reality of the situation began to settle on him. He had a wife for a week. A wife who was made of crystal and was slowly breaking apart. He felt a sudden heavy weight on his shoulders. What had he done? He looked at Alara. She was watching him, her head tilted slightly. She seemed to sense his uncertainty. Slowly, she reached out one of her hands. It was cool and smooth when he took it and surprisingly light. Home, she whispered. Her voice was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. It was like the wind chimes his mother had hanging on their porch when he was a boy. It was soft and musical. He nodded, his throat feeling tight. Yes, let's go home. His quarters were small and practical. A main room with a table and a small kitchen area, a sleeping area, and a hygiene unit. It was designed for one person. It was filled with his things, data pads, a few real paper books, some tools from his work, and a photo of his family on Earth. It felt very human. He led Alara inside. She paused at the doorway, her eyes taking in everything. The light from his lamp reflected off her skin, casting small, shimmering dots on the walls. She seemed fascinated by the ordinary objects. She pointed a delicate finger at the photo. Family? She chimed softly. Suman picked up the photo. Yes, my mother, my father, and my sister. On Earth. She looked at the image for a long time, as if memorizing the faces of the people who were important to him. Then she turned and looked around the room again. She moved slowly to the center of the main room. She stood there, perfectly still, her light pulsing gently. Suman didn't know what to do. What was the protocol for the first hour of a marriage to a dying crystal alien? Should he offer her something? Did she eat? Did she sleep? Alara, he said, his voice gentle. What do you need? What can I do for you? She turned to face him. She brought her hands together in that graceful gesture. I serve, she chimed. I care for you. This is the song. What do you need, Suman? He was taken aback. He had thought he would be taking care of her. But her wish was to be a devoted wife, which meant her purpose was to care for him. I am okay, he said. You don't need to serve me. You should rest. She shook her head slowly, a sad chime echoing in the room. To rest is to wait for the end. To serve is to live. Please let me live. The word struck Suman deeply. He understood. Keeping busy, having a purpose, was a way to fight off the darkness. He looked around his small kitchen. He had been about to make some tea before all of this happened. Okay, he said softly. I was going to make some tea. Would you like to help me? A warm, golden light flowed through her body. It was the brightest she had been since he had met her. The cracks on her arms seemed to glow with a soft golden light instead of their painful white. She nodded eagerly. I will make your tea. He showed her the electric kettle and the canister of tea leaves. He showed her his favorite cup. Her movements were slow and deliberate, She handled the cup as if it were the most precious thing in the universe. She poured the hot water with immense care. When she was done, she carried the cup to him with both hands, her eyes fixed on the liquid to make sure not a single drop was spilled. She held it out to him. "For you," she chimed. He took the cup. The tea was perfect, but it was more than that. In her simple, devoted act, she had filled his quiet, lonely quarters with a sense of peace and purpose he had never known. He wasn't just fulfilling a wish for a dying woman. He was building a home with his wife. And for the first time, he felt the true weight and beauty of the word yes. The small quarters became a new world. For Sumin, it was a world of quiet discovery. For Alara, it was a world of purpose. Their life together settled into a gentle rhythm, a language of care that they were both learning to speak. Sumin quickly realized that Alara's idea of being a wife was built from small, consistent acts. It was not about grand romantic words. It was a practical devotion. Her first lesson to him was about light. The bright white light from the main ceiling lamp made her wince. The fine cracks on her skin seemed to ache under its glare. Sumin noticed this. He spent an hour adjusting the room's lighting, finding a softer, warmer glow that made her sigh with relief. A soft, golden light from a corner lamp became her sun. Her second lesson was about sound. The constant low hum of the station's machinery was a background noise he had learned to ignore, but Alara heard it as a constant, draining pressure. Sumin found an old audio player and dug through music files. He tried soft, classical music from Earth. She listened politely, but it was clear the complex melodies meant little to her. Then he found simple, ambient sounds, the sound of gentle rain, the soft crash of ocean waves. When he played these, her whole body seemed to relax. The light inside her pulsed in time with the waves, calm and steady. In return, she began to care for his space with a reverence that touched him. She could not lift heavy things, but she would spend an hour slowly dusting his data pads and books with a soft cloth he gave her. She arranged his tools on the workbench in a neat, orderly line. Every object she touched was treated with respect. Her favorite task was preparing his meals. She could not eat human food, but she learned how he liked his tea. She learned that he preferred his soup hot and his water cold. She would stand by the small heating unit, watching the water until it was exactly the right temperature. Her entire being focused on this one simple job. When she handed him the cup, her eyes would watch his face, looking for any sign of pleasure. Seeing him take a sip and smile was, for her, a great victory. One evening, Sumin was reading a technical manual on his data pad. Alara was sitting on the floor nearby, her legs folded under her. She was perfectly still, as she often was. "What is in the words?" she chimed softly, her voice breaking the comfortable silence. Sumin looked up. "It's instructions. It tells me how machines work. How to fix them." "Your people speak to the machines?" she asked, her head tilted. "In a way, yes," he said with a small smile. "We tell them what to do with code and electricity." She was silent for a moment. "My people speak to the light and the stone. We share stories not with words, but with patterns." She lifted her hand. The light inside her palm began to shift and swirl. Colors moved under her skin like oil on water. They formed into shapes that looked like swirling galaxies and blooming alien flowers. It was a story told in silent, beautiful light. Sumin put his datapad down. He watched, mesmerized. "What is that story?" he whispered. "It is the story of my first memory," she chimed. "The light of my home star warming the crystal plains. It is a happy story." He began to read to her every night, not from his technical manuals, but from his small collection of real books. Poetry, old stories about heroes and journeys. He read her a simple children's story about a little boat on a big ocean. She listened to every word, her light glowing softly. She especially loved the poems. The rhythm of the words seemed to make sense to her, like a song without music. As the days passed, a change came over Sumin. The quiet loneliness that had been his companion for years began to fade. He would hurry home after his work in the xenobiology lab, not to an empty room, but to a place where someone was waiting for him. He found himself thinking about her during the day. Was the light too bright? Was the hum of the station bothering her? He started bringing small things back for her to see. A strangely shaped rock from a new asteroid sample, a leaf from the arboretum that had turned a brilliant red. She would take each object and study it as if it were a great treasure. The leaf she kept on the table for 3 days, watching how its color changed in the different lights of the room. but the cracks were still there. They were spreading slowly but surely. A new thin line appeared on her cheek one morning. She tried to hide it by turning her head, but Suman saw it. The reality of their situation was always present, a shadow in their warm, lit room. One afternoon, he came home to find her struggling. She was trying to lift his blanket to fold it, but her arms were trembling. The simple task was now too much for her. She let out a small, chime-like sound of frustration. Suman rushed over. "Elara, stop. You don't have to do that. Please rest." She looked at him, and the light in her eyes flickered with sadness. "I want to care for you. It is my purpose. If I cannot do this, then what am I?" He knelt down in front of her. He gently took her cool crystalline hands in his. "You are my wife," he said, his voice firm and full of emotion. "Your purpose is not to fold my blankets. Your purpose is to be here with me, talking to me, sharing your light with me. That is enough. That is more than enough." Tears were in his eyes. He was not just saying it to make her feel better. He meant it. The poetry, the shared silence, the way her light warmed his small quarters. That was the real devotion. The chores were just an expression of it. Elara looked at his face, at the tears he did not try to hide. She saw the truth in his eyes. A slow, warm, golden light filled her body from her core to the tips of her fingers. It was the deepest, most vibrant glow he had ever seen from her. The cracks on her skin looked for a moment not like wounds, but like golden threads stitching her together. She brought her hands up and gently touched his wet cheeks. Her touch was cool and smooth. "I understand," she chimed, her voice softer than ever. "Thank you, Suman." That night, she did not try to do any chores. She simply sat beside him while he read, her light pulsing slowly and peacefully. The act of just being together was no longer a waiting for the end. It had become the reason they were both there. It had become the heart of the song. The change was sudden. One morning, Elara could not get up from her resting spot. It was a soft mat Suman had made for her near the window that looked out at the stars. She tried to push herself up, but her arms, now covered in a web of fine white lines, would not support her weight. A small pained chime escaped her. Suman was at her side in an instant. "Elara?" "I am sorry," she whispered, her light flickering weakly. "I cannot stand." Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through Suman. He called the station medics. They arrived quickly, a team of 2, a Thraxian and a Gron. They were efficient and professional. They scanned Elara with their handheld devices. The Thraxian clicked its mandibles, studying the readout. "The structural decay is accelerating," it stated in its buzzing voice. "The core energy matrix is destabilizing. It is the final stage." The Gron nodded its large head. "Life functions are declining. The process is irreversible. Our records show terminal xylins typically deactivate within 48 standard hours once this stage begins." The words were like physical blows. 48 hours? 2 days. "Is there nothing you can do?" Suman asked, his voice tight. "Nothing at all?" The Thraxian looked at him with its compound eyes. "We do not have the technology to regrow crystalline lattice. It is a biological certainty. We can offer a painless deactivation now, if that is your wish. It would be more efficient." Suman stared at them, horrified. "No," he said, his voice shaking with anger he didn't know he felt. "That is not our wish. Leave us." The medics left, their duty done. The room felt emptier and colder after they were gone. The shadow that had been lurking in the corner had now stepped into the middle of the room. Suman looked at Elara, lying so still on her mat. Her light was so dim. She looked up at him, and there was no fear in her eyes, only a deep, quiet acceptance. "It is okay, Suman," she chimed softly. "I am not afraid. I was a wife. I was loved. It is more than I hoped for." He knelt beside her, taking her hand. It felt cooler than before. "It's not enough," he whispered, his throat tight. "It's not enough for me." He was an engineer, a xenobiologist. His whole life was about understanding how things worked and fixing problems. Everyone saw Elara's condition as a fact, a sad but unchangeable truth. But Suman saw it as a system failure. He saw the cracks not as a mystical sign of death, but as a physical problem. And every problem had a cause. Every cause might have a solution. He remembered the station medic's words. "The core energy matrix is destabilizing." What did that mean? He had access to the galactic biological database. He spent the next few hours at his terminal, his face lit by the screen, searching for any information on Xylan physiology. Most of it was what he already knew. They were a crystalline life form. They were dying out. Their population decline was linked to a loss of their homeworld's unique energy field. The reports were clinical and final. They were obituaries for an entire species. But then, buried in an old, obscure research paper, he found a clue. It was a theoretical study by a long-dead scientist. The paper suggested that the xylem crystalline structure wasn't just organic mineral. It was a resonant energy lattice. It needed to be in tune to remain stable. The paper theorized that the specific energy frequency of their lost homeworld acted like a song that held their bodies together. Without that song, the lattice slowly fell out of harmony and shattered. A crazy, desperate idea began to form in Sumin's mind. A resonator. If her body was falling apart because it had lost its stabilizing frequency, maybe he could sing that song back to her. He couldn't recreate her homeworld's energy field, but maybe he could create a localized one, a small, focused field just for her. He spent the rest of the day and all through the night working. He turned his small kitchen table into a workbench. He used parts from his own engineering kit. He took apart a non-essential environmental sensor and a high-powered communication device. He was trying to build a machine that could produce a complex, stable energy frequency. It was like trying to build a musical instrument that could play a song to heal a broken soul. Jay came by the next morning. He found Sumin surrounded by wires and circuit boards, his eyes red from lack of sleep. Alara was lying on her mat watching him, her light a faint, steady glow. "Sumin, what are you doing?" Jay asked, his voice full of concern. "You look terrible. You should be with her, not playing with this junk." "It's not junk," Sumin said, his fingers carefully soldering a tiny connection. "It's a resonator. I think I can stabilize her structure." Jay stared at his friend. He saw the desperation and the fierce hope in his eyes. He looked at Alara, who was so still and fragile. He had thought this would end in sadness, but seeing Sumin fight against the inevitable made his own practical heart ache. "Stabilize her?" Jay said softly. "The whole galaxy says it can't be done." "The whole galaxy said no to her wish," Sumin replied, not looking up. "I'm not the whole galaxy. I'm her husband." Jay was quiet for a long moment. He watched Sumin work, his hands trembling with exhaustion. He saw the deep love in the room, a love so strong it was trying to defy physics and biology. He sighed, the sound heavy in the quiet room. "Okay," Jay said. "What do you need?" Sumin looked up, surprised. "The power cell in that thing is too weak," Jay said, pointing at the makeshift device. "You need a high-output cell from a maintenance bot." "I can get one. I know where they are stored." Hope, real and fierce, bloomed in Sumin's chest. "Jay!" "Thank you," Jay just nodded. "Don't thank me yet, just make it work." An hour later, Jay returned with the power cell. It was small but powerful. Sumin connected it to his machine. The resonator hummed to life. A small dish, made from a repurposed audio speaker, glowed with a soft blue light. It was ready. Or as ready as it would ever be. Sumin carried the heavy device over to Alara. He placed the emitter dish near her. She looked at the machine, then at Sumin's tired, hopeful face. "I am ready," she chimed, her voice barely a whisper. "I was a wife. I was loved. It is enough." Sumin shook his head, tears finally streaming down his face. "It's not over yet." He took a deep breath and switched the machine to its active cycle. The resonator hummed, a low, steady sound that filled the quiet room. The blue light from the emitter dish washed over Ilara's still form. Sumin held his breath, his heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. Jay stood by the door, his hands clenched, watching. For a long, terrible moment, nothing happened. Alara lay there, her light faint, the cracks on her skin looking deeper and darker than ever. The machine hummed, but she did not respond. Sumin's hope, which had felt so strong just moments before, began to crumble. It was a stupid idea. A crazy dream. You couldn't fix a dying race with scraps from a junk drawer. He was about to shut it off, to fall to his knees and hold her, to apologize for his foolishness. When he saw it, a single crack on her forearm, one of the deepest, began to glow. It was not the painful white light of breaking crystal. It was a warm golden color. It was a soft, gentle light, like the first ray of sun at dawn. The golden light spread. It traveled along the web of fractures on her arm, turning each white line into a delicate thread of gold. It moved to her other arm, to her chest, to her face. The humming of the resonator seemed to find a harmony with the light inside her. Her core, which had been a dim flicker, began to brighten. It pulsed slowly at first, then stronger and more steady. The cracks were not healing by disappearing. They were being filled. A beautiful golden substance like liquid light was flowing into every fracture, sealing them, making her whole again. The process was slow and miraculous. Where there had been broken pieces, there was now a network of golden seams. It was like the ancient art of kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold, making it more beautiful for having been broken. Alara let out a soft gasp. Her eyes, which had been half closed, opened wide. They were no longer dim. They shone with a brilliant, steady light. She slowly, carefully pushed herself up onto her elbows. There was no tremble in her arms, no sign of pain. She looked at her hands, turning them over. She saw the golden lines tracing patterns across her skin. She looked at Su Min, her expression one of pure, stunned wonder. Su Min, her voice chimed. It was no longer a weak whisper. It was clear and strong, like a bell ringing in the quiet air. He could not speak. He could only stare. Tears of joy now streaming down his face. He dropped to his knees beside her, reaching out a hand to touch her arm. It was warm. It was solid. The cracks were sealed smooth under his fingertips. Jay let out a low whistle from the doorway. "You did it," he breathed. "You actually did it." Alara moved her legs. She stood up. It was not the slow, careful movement from before. It was fluid and graceful. She stood at her full height, her body glowing from within, the golden seams making her look like a statue crafted from starlight and gold. She took a step towards Su Min. Then another. She stood before him, looking into his eyes. "The song," she said, her chime-like voice full of awe. "You found the song that holds us together. I can hear it. It is all around me." She reached out and cupped his face in her hands. Her touch was warm and full of life. "You did not just say yes to my wish," she chimed softly. "You said yes to my life." The news spread through the station like an energy surge. The Xylan was not dead. The human had saved her. The story was told and retold. The human who said yes when it was illogical. The human who saw a person to love, not a problem to manage. The human who fought against the certain death of an entire species with scraps and determination. The station medics came back, their scanners buzzing in confusion. Their readings showed a stable, healthy energy matrix. The structural decay had not just stopped. It had been reversed in a way their science could not explain. They looked at Su Min not with pity or clinical distance, but with a new deep respect. But for Su Min and Alara, the outside world did not matter. Their small quarters were no longer a waiting room for an ending. It was a home bright with a future. Alara's devotion did not change. She still made his tea with the same loving care. She still listened to him read, but now there was a new strength in her movements, a new joy in her light. She began to learn about his world with a hungry curiosity. She asked him to teach her about Earth, about his family, about engineering. Su Min, in turn, learned more about her. He learned that the golden seams were permanent. She was healed, but the evidence of her near death would always be a part of her, making her more beautiful. He learned that the resonator was not a cure for her whole species. It was too specific, too tuned to her unique energy signature. But it was a proof. It was a beginning. It showed that the impossible was not. One evening, they were sitting together by the window, watching the stars drift by. Alara's head was resting on Su Min's shoulder. Her light pulsed slowly, contentedly. The song of union was meant to be a final comfort, she chimed softly. A beautiful end to a life. But you, Su Min, you turned it into a beginning. He put his arm around her, feeling the warm, solid strength of her. It was a beginning for me too, he said. You taught me that devotion isn't about grand gestures. It's about showing up. It's about making the tea and adjusting the lights. It's about saying yes. She looked up at him, her luminous eyes full of a love that needed no translation. Then let our song continue, she said. And in the quiet of the room, surrounded by the simple evidence of their life together, it did. The human had said yes, and in doing so, he had not just saved a beautiful alien girl. He had built a love that would last a lifetime. A golden seam mending two lonely souls into one complete whole. On a cold space station, surrounded by logic and efficiency, a human's heart had proven to be the most powerful force in the universe.